Alright, hello everyone, welcome to my Fire Emblem, The Sacred Echoes speedrun. Uh, for those who don't know, Fire Emblem Sacred Echoes is one of the many, when I say many, I mean many, um, remakes of Fire Emblem 2, which is Fire Emblem Gaiden. It received this remake first as a Japanese exclusive in 2002 for its 10-year anniversary. Then, of course, we got an international remake in Shadows of Valentia, which is Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia. And then we got this game, its international release, in 2022. And while we are playing on the 2022 version of the game, everything you can do that I'm doing here can also be done in the 2002 version of the game, because they use the same RNG tables and same RNG systems, provided that you play on the GBA RN mode, which we are, because it's very much preferable. And both versions have the 100% mode and 0% mode if you wish to play on that. We're playing on 100% because RNG manipulation is so bad in this game. We'll get to that more later. But yeah, in the 2002 version, if you're playing on the original Japanese release of this game, you would need to input the code LRRRLR up select up, and then that is the 100% mode code should you wish to do it on the original release. There are a couple of other differences. This version of the game is, of course, an international release, and so you can play it in English, which is why I've chosen to play this on this, so you all can read what's happening. So, you know, it makes for better viewer experience. Also, there is a little bit more skippable text in this version. The original release had very little skippable text. This game doesn't have much, but it has a little bit more. Okay, enough about versions. Actually, I lied. We're still going to talk more about versions a little bit later. Let's talk about units. We've got 4 units here. Alm, Gray, Lucas, Tobin. And there was 2 optional recruits. Faye. This is the first game to have Faye in it. And Cliff. Now, normally you would pick up these units because it's very helpful to have additional hands on deck for these early chapters, especially if you're playing on a difficulty that's not easy. We're playing on easy. Also, more movement of units is actually bad for us. We want to be using less characters, not more, because every input that you take moving characters, that's time, right? And we want to be spending as few of that as we can. Hence the point of the speed run. So, you know, no time moving units. They take time to recruit. Then you gotta move them, especially if you want them to actually do anything. Which, like, I don't know what we would even want to have them do. I guess you could use Cliff as, like, you could use either as a real big boy carries. They actually have really good stats. Independent of 100% growth. So if you're playing with growths, you might want to consider them. Or playing on normal growths, you would want to consider them. We are not, though. But yeah, these are the units. Tobin and Gray are both villagers. Villagers, just like in Gaiden and in Shadows of Valentia, can promote into one of any number of different classes. Those being mercenary, archer, mage, Cavalier Soldier. Most of those are worthless. 3 of them are worth consideration. And those 3 that are worth consideration are Archer, Mage, and Mercenary. Mercenary, just in general, has really good stats. You use swords. Swords are pretty good in this game. You have mages. Mages use magic. Magic has accuracy independent of terrain, which is very notable because terrain is really powerful. And we've actually hit our first major difference between this version of the game and other releases of the Valencia world, and that's this chapter. So normally, in Gaiden, in Shadows of Valencia, the 3DS, you would be dungeon crawling here of some kind, and in this game, they're just like, no, dungeon crawling is actually lame. What if we just played the chapter, like just a real big boy chapter? And we're promoting our guys here. You can promote at any Mila statue. We're promoting into Mage and Mercenary. Notice we'll be leaving out the Archer, which is a little bit of a shame, because Archer is well known for being just an incredible class line. But sadly, we don't have the space for it. The accuracy is so bad. And you would think, it's a Game Boy Advance game, we can manipulate that, but you can only do so much when you have to hit 7 consecutive 63s, as it turns out. So no archers for us. The appeal of archers is that bows get 1 to 4 range. I think maybe 1 to 5 range. I don't know if they actually get the 5th range in Echoes, Sacred Echoes. They might, but they get 1 to 4 range, which sounds like it would be incredible. You could just kill everything on sight. But as it turns out, you never really need more than 1 to 3 range for most things. And with a mage ring, any mage can get to the 3 range. So that's not really necessary. And the magic is just much more consistent, especially when you're playing on 100% growths. Tobin's our mage of choice. 1, because we don't have to go out of our way to recruit him like we would Faye or Cliff, despite the fact that they have theoretically pretty good upside with much better spell lists than Tobin does. Because Tobin only gets 2 spells, Fire and Excalibur. Those are the only offensive magic that he gets. Luckily, those are the only 2 that we need. Because they happen to both be very good. We make Gray a Mercenary. Mercenary Gray is a classic. People love Mercenary Gray, and for good reason. The Mercenary patches up all of his speed issues, and he has no other issues. Except for his hit rates, and swords, again, good hit. Archer's bad hit. But I definitely did consider Archer for Gray, but in the end, you just get access to so many really powerful swords and units to use them. But there's definitely consideration for Archer Gray in this run, for sure. And I'll probably talk about the places where that could theoretically come up. There's a couple I'm thinking of just off the top of my head. We got 2 new units on this chapter. We got Silk and Acantha. Silk is in every version of the Valencia games, no matter what you're playing. You've probably ran into her before. She's our cleric, and she has access to the most powerful spell in the game, Warp. Warp allows us to teleport a unit to a different location. Very good. We need that ASAP. And we need to get that, I believe by Chapter 7, I think is the requirement, because it's the first time we're going to be using Warp. You could do Chapter 7 without it, but it's slower, but it's not that bad. But Chapter 8 is just it's just like super egregious if you don't have it, like super bad. And so, we'd really want it by then. We also get Acantha. We're going to drink some speed here. We get Acantha. Acantha's our thief. New to the Sacred Echoes, only in the Sacred Echoes, did not make her return for the 3DS release. So she's just in this one. She is a thief. Of course, that was made. The GBA games, they've got chests in them. They had already made the chest assets for Binding Blade. You might as well put them in this game too, and you're going to need somebody to open them. And in the end, they ended up giving Alm that ability, supposedly quite late in development, if the rumors are to be believed. But they ended up doing that with both Alm and main Lord of Route 2, which we'll get to when we get to. We're almost done here. This is a survive chapter, but I mainly use it as a getting everyone up to speed chapter, between the stat boosts that you can grab, as well as just a bunch of EXP being on hand for this. And I suppose now is as good a time as any to complain about something that I will be complaining about all throughout this run, and that is hit rates. Hit rates are like pretty bad in this game, and unlike every other Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem where you can cursor wiggle your way out, in this game you can't. You can't cursor wiggle. This is true of both the 2002 release, the Japanese exclusive, and this version. Why? Because you couldn't cursor wiggle your way out in Gaiden, so you shouldn't be able to do it here. And you know what? That's kind of based. It's also really bad for me, like egregious. So not only is it the main reason why you can't use an archer, because you can't like rig hits, rig crits, very effectively. It's also the reason that we're playing on 100% growth mode, because you can't rig level ups either. So you really kind of just have to take what's given to you, and what's given to you is really bad, like just awful. And so there's that, all really bad. And then the hit rates are pretty okay when you have weapon triangle advantage. So like Gray has hitting 95, 96s here against these brigands on neutral terrain. As you might expect when you are not on neutral terrain, these hit rates get a lot more dicey really fast. Like it is like really dire at times. Because your hit rates do, like, you saw in the previous chapter, when we were fighting enemies on pillars, we were, like, missing a whole bunch, especially with Silk, who has sub 70% hit rates, partially because Nosferatu is just really bad. So we do have to, so we do a lot of stuff in specific orders that might look really strange. Do note, it's for RNG manipulation purposes. Everything in this game is controlled by the main RNG, except for picking up hidden items, which isn't. But there is no hidden items in this game, at least none that are relevant for our purposes. And as such, everything that's relevant for us is controlled by the main RNG, which in this game can only be manipulated by attacks and using items. No cursor wiggles allowed, like I mentioned earlier. So that's everything. So that's level up RNG, which we don't have because we're playing on 100% growth mode. But on normally, well, we do have it a little bit. You'll see later. There's the 67% hit I was talking about. You fight an archer in a forest. The hit rate's like super bad. Yeah, but it's your hit, your dodge, your crit, your avoid. And then a few other things. Like in some cases, whether or not enemies move. Some enemies have random movement. Some have random chance to do an action. Those are controlled by the RNs as well. This chapter is very, very normal. If you've played Shadows of Valentia, you know what's happening here. Or if you've played Gaiden, you know what's happening here. Alm is storming through and killing everyone. except for the one enemy with the shield on the mountain who has 8,000 avoid and takes 0 damage from anyone who's a physical attacker. You pretty much have to attack him with a mage, and so having at least one mage is mandatory, because 75 is genuinely the best hit you're going to get on this guy with anyone. It's really, really rough. We get the hide shield. The hide shield is one of the best items in the game. It is a passive defense buff, so it's almost a Draco shield if you think about it. It gives you +3 defense so long as it's in your inventory, so it eats an inventory slot, but in return you gain 1.5 Draco shields worth of defense, so that's pretty good actually. Here's our first chapter with a different objective than in Gaiden or in Childs of Valencia. This is no longer I believe this used to be a route map when you took this fort. Now it is not. It is now a seas map, which is very cool. We do love seas maps. This game got very experimental with objectives, which, considering it's coming right after the Binding Blade in its initial release, I can't say that I blame them, because that game was only seas maps, so they were already very familiar with how to do seas maps, and so they're putting seas maps in this game. It makes sense to me. Also, it's nice to break up the variety. What did we had? We had route, survive. So we get a nice little different flavor here. Don't worry. This game was still the sequel. This game was still the next game of the series after the Binding Blade. So as you know, there's going to be a lot of seas chapters, so good luck. You're seizing the throne a lot in this game. All these hits, all these misses right here. Also, we could get this this kill with Silk. The extents we go to make sure that things work exactly where they need is pretty intense. You're gonna see some very strange combats and some even stranger deployments, especially in the late game, because we got to get the RNs to work. I will say, the preps for this chapter in particular are not my best work. I spend a little too long figuring out exactly what I want to do here. It kind of makes me want to go back and redo the entire run, but I'm not going to do that because this game's pretty long as is. We got ourselves another seas map here full of lance units. Something I have not mentioned yet. This game does have the weapon triangle. This is a Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem. And as such, swords beat axes, they lose to lances. Lances beat swords, they lose to axes. And axes beat lances but lose to swords. Just like all the other Fire Emblems. that have a weapon triangle, because there are many that don't. The weapon triangle doesn't come up too much in this game, especially since a lot of our combat is being done with Tobin and Syke right now, who are mages. But we are at a disadvantage for pretty much every fight we do with Alm or Gray that's not against an archer or mage. Because basically all of these people have lances at this point in the game. But it was very helpful early when the enemies had axes. It really helped our hit rates. Of course, our hit rates aren't that affected, as you can see, by the fact that we're still landing at pretty good hit rates with Gray there. Of course, we don't have great hit rates against the people we can't counterattack. That's our first enemy with the javelin. Oh, I guess we should probably talk about Claire, who we got in this chapter. Claire is interesting. She isn't very good, but she's, you know, a flying unit, which you would expect would make for a good carry, but this game has so many archers that it just really isn't safe for her to do anything. And again, lances are not great. They have pretty shaky hit rate. They might be the worst weapon type in this game, actually. So it's just not safe for her to be the carry, unfortunately. We get Excalibur here from Tobin. That's his last offensive spell he'll get for the rest of the game. But don't worry. That's good enough. And we get the Levin Sword. For those unaware, the Levin Sword is the 1-2 range lightning blade. And it's going to zap everyone until they die. If you were paying attention in the previous chapter, Syke also obtained Warp. Which is right on cue because we need it immediately for this chapter. As we go into chapter 7, the first chapter that's actually interesting. We've been through a bunch of chapters that were all lame and boring. This one is not. Actually, the previous chapter was interesting in terms of Sylke's routing specifically in order to make sure that she got warp on time for this chapter. This chapter did... Man... this was our first chapter that I think took hours of routing for this. Because I had originally done it before I had warp. Because the old routing did not get warp by this point. But now it does. So I had to reroute this entire chapter to include warp. And it saved several turns, so it was 100% worth it. But... And by several, I mean 4. So again, 100% worth it. Would do it every time. But it does make things a little more complicated, as you can see by Tobin double missing that mercenary. There's nothing we can do about that. There's no conceivable way to make the hit rates so that you hit this mercenary on turn 1. And I know because I tried. But it's not possible. Syke, courtesy of 100% growth, Sylke's gained HP on every single level up. And that means that she has enough warp. She's got enough HP to fire off 2 warps in this chapter here. Warp, like all magic in this game, as well as in Shadows of Valencia. I'm not sure if it works this way in Gaiden 2, but magic is used off of HP. So, you're using your HP literally as a resource. As you could see it go down right there every time that Tobin casts fire. Nosferatu does not have an HP cost. In return, its hit rate is terrible. So, you know, fair trades, fair trades. We also got a Cavalier. You could see him over there on the left earlier. That's Fernand. Fernand's playable in this game. Yo, that's crazy. He's fine. He's like a Cavalier. I was originally actually using him on this chapter for some combat, but then I decided, actually no, that's worse. What if I just didn't do that? And that's how we ended up. I don't know if Gray actually needs the Iron Sword here for this, but we do need to pick up this Steel Lance for something that's going to be relevant later. There's me thinking about fighting with Fernand here, but I decided to just do it with Syke. and just land the 62. But the old route actually had Fernand fight that guy. But I decided, no, if I can get the experience on Syke, I should probably do that. Because she does need to be, you know, a competent combat unit. At least semi-competent, because there are going to be times where she's going to be facing enemies. We do need her to live. Plus, we need her to have more magic, so she has more warp range. Anyway, we're pretty much done here. This is an interesting map. It was very interesting to get the where do you warp and how do you do it. In the end, the answer was quite simple. Just give all the 11 sword and have him go to work. As we go to Chapter 8, The Usurper, this is actually a two-parter, because we have to take a detour into the Caverns of Destiny. And by the Caverns of Destiny, I mean the Deliverance hideout, which is in this cave crawling with undead monsters. You know, that's how you know that you're on the good guys team, when your hideout is infected by a demon spawn. So that's great. I guess I can talk about the plot here while we watch Tobin slaughter everyone and Alm slaughter everyone that Tobin doesn't kill. So far, we've been introduced to Alm and his friends. Lucas, that was the soldier, who's right below Syke there. He came to the village searching for General Nyson, who is Alm's grandfather, allegedly. They look nothing alike, so, you know, are they really related? Who knows? But Sir Myson's a great hero. He saved a lot of people a long time ago, and he's very powerful. But he's a cranky old man, so he's like, no, I'm not gonna help you. Screw off. But Alm, eager to get out of tiny backwater village number 4, which is where he was born, agrees to join. And so join he does. And then his friends tag along because they don't want him to die. But only 2 of them, because we didn't recruit Cliff and Faye, so get owned. Oh yeah, there's also a strength. There's a strength well there, so you can drink some strength. Which is what we're doing with Gray. But anyway, so now we are at the Deliverance hideout after saving the leader of the Deliverance's sister, Claire. We can now actually go here and talk to the leader of the Deliverance, and then that's the plan. And then they'll go from there, kick him out of Zofia, and then we'll figure it out. That's the plan. These enemies are not particularly threatening. Though I do have to shout out the Bone Walkers, who, for some reason, have enough res that you can't actually kill them with the 11 sword. We pick up some gold here. You'll find that in this game there are shops in the overworld, and that's cool. Very, very sacred stones, actually. So there's some shops in the overworld you can go to. You can buy some cool stuff in there. And there's like some decent money you can pick up throughout this game. That was one of the skippable cutscenes that you can skip in this version that you can't in the original release. We're dumping a bunch of items into the convoy. Courtesy of playing on easy mode, we get a few extra special treats. And one of those is a shared convoy. So all of the items that we have in Alm's team will be delivered to Team 2 once we get them. But first we have to go through this chapter. There's probably something really cool and interesting you can do on this chapter. I just don't know what it is. So I just kind of warped Tobin to the enemies, and then I'm going to warp Alm up so he can seize the throne. And that's the whole chapter. Unfortunate miss there against Slade, but we actually can't kill him anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But before I was actually giving him one of the strength wells for his +1 power, so he could theoretically one-round Slade. But unfortunately, my man's misses anyway, so it doesn't actually matter. There wasn't a great way to make him not miss. So instead we just have to kill him with Alm. Something cool about this game, and I think that this is also true of Shadows of Valentia, is this game targets, auto-equips your best weapon if you cannot counterattack. So if Alm gets hit from 2 range, his normal sword he can't counterattack with, so he'll automatically use the Levin sword instead. This is relevant for a couple of factors. Number one, it means that you can't, and it means you can't force use magic, which is very notable. So if you have a magic unit who also can wield a sword, then they're always going to prioritize using the sword if they can, which is bad. Because magic's really strong in this game. The generic sword isn't. This game doesn't have weapons, like in the same way that the other Fire Emblem games do. Even different from Shadows of Valentia and Gaiden. Because I believe in both of those games, no weapons have durability. And in this game, weapons do have durability, but only those that are not generic and not magic. So the Steel Lance we got, the Iron Sword that we got, both of those have durability. You can only use them so many times before they break. But your generic swords and axes and lances, they don't. And I do say axes because this is the only the Sacred Echoes is the only one that actually gives you a playable axe unit. This game gives you multiple playable axe units. Again, kind of necessary with the inclusion of the weapon triangle, even though the weapon triangle isn't that impactful in any meaningful way. Anyway, that's the end of Alm's team. We move on to Celica's team. I don't have much to say about Celica's team other than the orange. We get the orange. So what is the orange? So the orange is, I think the first time we've ever seen an item like this. It increases all of your growth rates by 5%. If you've played FE7, you're familiar with the Aphis drops. Well, that's what they are. So this is the you know, the placebo drops, or as I call it, the placebo orange, essentially. We give Celica the lightning sword. It's best for her only for this chapter and not any time after, because pretty much afterwards you actually get like real stats that you can use real stuff with. But for now, it one-shots pretty much everyone except for the Bone Walker, I believe. So it's that. We have 3 other units available to us: Bowie, May, and Jenny. May did 1 combat and killed 1 enemy. I think that's the only enemy she kills in the entire game, so don't get too excited. And Jenny has some minor edge cases that she comes up, but Bowie will never be deployed again. So, I'm sorry, Bowie fans in shambles, I know. So the placebo orange, like I mentioned, we're playing on 100% growth. So what does the placebo orange do? Well, it gives Celica, or it gives whoever eats it, 105%. in every stat. And again, I can to some extent manipulate these level ups and what they're going to be. So whenever you see a +2, just note that that was like I had to manip for the +2, or it just kind of happened on the route that I was already going to be using. But there is one in particular that I do manip for, and that is a plus strength level up. I need a +2 in power, I guess that's what it's called. For what chapter is that? 20C, I think, before chapter 20C. So it's a long way off, but I do need one. And she'll be level capped by that point, so basically you need to get it before she caps. There's no strength booster, or if there is, I don't know where it is on this team, so you're kind of stuck with it. I think I do know where it is. I think you have to fight the Necro Dragons for it, but I don't want to do that. So we just kind of have to get it with the orange, and there's no hope otherwise. The Iron Sword we picked up back in Chapter 3, this is the real reason we picked it up, is so we could use it on Celica, because otherwise she actually cannot kill these enemies, because she is 1 strength short. Again, the placebo orange could theoretically fix that problem as well, but it did not. Celica's chapters are very boring by comparison. Alm's chapters have like a lot going on. You're like using multiple units to clear interesting objectives. And here we're just having Celica move forward until all the enemies are dead. And yeah, I hope you guys like that, because you're about to see it again multiple times. Pretty much the entire first part of the Celica story is her moving forward on boats to kill enemies. We do open this for the hide shield. I believe this does come up, but I forget when. We did get a new unit in Saber. But we don't use Saber, which is very interesting. I'm sure many of you are very surprised, because I believe the other Valencia games, Gaiden and Shadows of Valencia, both use Saber in their speedruns, I believe, and we are not. And the reason for that is because he's really bad. He's like really bad in this game. He's actually not. He's perfectly fine. He's totally an acceptable unit. He might be too acceptable, actually. He's actually too good. Because his stats end up too high, and it causes a difference in AI targeting that I cannot contend with later. So we cannot use him. Which is just so funny. His stats are too good. So we have to use a unit who's worse. Who we don't have yet. So for now. Also, it's kind of awkward to train Saber. You could train him in the same way that you train the unit that we are using, but again, because his base stats are higher, his stats are going to be too good. So anyway, we get to this chapter. I guess this is as good a time as any to talk about plot. So we wrapped up Alm's little section where they kicked out the bad guys and saved the kingdom. And then we jump over to Celica's story. Celica has been informed that the world is dying. Just the entire world is collapsing. And she decides that something needs to be done about that. And the only being with strong enough juice to actually do something about that is the goddess, Mila. And so she's going to go to the Mila temple to figure out what's wrong. And that's the thing. But she needs a safe passage to get there, so she goes by boat. However, she gets interrupted because there's a bunch of pirates just everywhere. Just everywhere. They're destroying everything. And so she's like, well, dang, I guess we have to kill these pirates now. And so that's exactly what she does. And that's why we're here. We have to kill whatever this guy's name is. I forget what it is. But he's the leader of the pirates in this area. So we got to take him out. We get a new spell on Celica. We did actually a little while ago. We got Thunder. Thunder is our first 3 range spell, which is very good. It's, I believe, 1 to 3 range. And it hits pretty hard, and it isn't that heavy. So you get pretty good ability to double, pretty good speed on it. Somewhat dubious hit rates, but it's not bad. Celica also has access to the offensive white magic skill. I guess it is black magic in this game. That's Seraphim. Seraphim is affected against demons and undeads, but it's actually just really strong. So we use it to kill the boss here before seizing the throne. And now that we've killed the pirates, surely we won't run into any other obnoxious boat chapters. Anyway, we get some new units. Valbar, Leon, and Kamui. Valbar, I think, is never deployed. Leon has some minor applications, but the unit that we're really interested in here is Kamui. So Kamui is Saber, but worse, which for us is exactly what we need. So we'll be making great use of him throughout our journey here. Though on this chapter, we don't really need him that much. He isn't really doing anything too important. We just need him to go ahead of Celica so we can gain vision on the boss. Because you can't kill what you can't see. C-S-E-E, not S-E-A, like what we're on. So, you know. I don't have much to say about Kamui. He's a mercenary. He's kind of like Gray, but worse. But he does what we want, so that's pretty good. If I could cursor wiggle RNG, we'd probably be using Saber, but we can't. So we get to use this guy, who I really don't care much for, but you know, it is what it is. Man, dude, these chapters are so boring. Oh my god. Like, despite like a couple of chapters that I did, I think, fairly poorly, that makes me want to replay this entire run, I do not want to do Celica Act 2 over here again. It's so bad. Like, it's so boring. So you guys, like in the couple maps ago where Celica was the only person deployed and moved forward until the enemies died? I hope you're ready to watch it again. Woo! Everyone undeploy. Click start, baby. Hey, we use the life fruit to gain some additional HP. I don't think that this is ever relevant, but it used to be, because there was a point where we actually ended up going on 1 HP at some point. I don't know. I'm kind of out of things to talk about for this section of the game. I guess I can complain more about the RNG. So let's talk about Game Boy Advance RNG. So Game Boy Advance, Fire Emblem, RNG are all kind of, all the games, they have an RNG table. And it's a set of random numbers, and basically it's going to call upon the next random number in the sequence in order to determine what happens. So, and then if the number is lower than, or if the chance of something to happen is lower than the number that it rolls, then it doesn't work, I believe. Maybe I have that backwards. I don't remember. It's complicated. But basically it's going to pull a number. And then if X chance is equal to or greater than the number, it happens. Or something like that. So if I roll... So if my RN number is 100... or 99, right? It's probably gonna happen. And then if the number is 4, it's probably not gonna happen. If that makes sense. Pretty sure I have that backwards actually, but I don't know. But generally speaking, it's gonna roll a number, then depending on that number is the action that occurs. Whether you hit or miss, whether you gain the stat or don't, based on those numbers. The basic RNs in the table, especially towards the top of the table, which is when you reset the game, it goes back to the top of the list, are generally not great. It results in a lot of unfortunate misses, which is really bad for us. And that's why it sucks really bad. And there were definitely many times where I was considering playing multiple chapters without resetting the RNs, but the RNG later in the table isn't super good. I mean, it's better. There are definitely times where I was very much considering not resetting the game to continue to have slightly better RNG. And that's especially important. And if there's a level where there's a lot of terrain, you actually might want to consider it. And there is actually one point, maybe two, I forget how many times I actually did it, but I know one off the top of my head where I actually did not reset. Because if you reset, you cannot complete the chapter. It's awesome. So, you know, it's super good. Big shout out to the graphic designers for this game, though. They killed it with these character designs. Like, they nailed it. These characters look great. And you know they did because these are the basis of the character designs that were used in the 3DS release for the Shadows of Valencia. Alright, so we went through this entire section of the game without a single chapter that was actually interesting. Well, we finally got one. It took the entire section of the game, but we got him. Presenting chapter 15, the last chapter in part 2, or act 2 or whatever, we actually get to deploy more than one unit. Now this is still mostly the Celica show, but we do bring Kamui because there is just a lot of enemies on this big route map, and you've got to take them all out. And there's just a lot going on. So Celica's going to go forward and go through the majority of the map, but because there's a bunch of enemies that are stuck in water, they move a little too slow. So we can't kite with them. There's also a couple enemies that don't move, who we also need to nab. And so Kamui's going to help us out with that. So he's basically here on straggler detail, but hey, that's at least slightly more interesting than just moving Celica forward. So I'll take it at this point. So this was an interesting chapter to actually do, simply because there was things that were actually happening. That's more than just, oh, move unit forward and then watch as the enemies kill themselves, which is its own kind of fun, but isn't really interesting from a routing perspective on my end, and I don't think it's really great to watch either, so it just kind of sucks. There's a couple villages here. Gonna be honest, don't remember what's in either of them, because I'm pretty sure I don't get either, so that's great. I don't have much in the way of stat benchmarks for this game, because everything's at 100% growth mode, so yeah, every time you gain a level, you're gaining everything. So I didn't really have to concern myself with benchmarks very much, because you're pretty much killing everything once you're at the point where you're killing everything. Or it's like the lightning sword, which either kills or it doesn't. Or my bad, the Levin sword, which either kills or it doesn't, but it has fixed damage. So no amount of power is going to change the outcome. There's the +2, by the way, the one that I mentioned. This is the benchmark that does matter, which is the +2 strength on any level up for Celica at any point, in order to enable a theoretically faster strat than what you do. Because you could there's a boss you can theoretically one round if you gain the point of strength, and you can't if you don't. I say theoretically because the RNG decided that we were in fact going to miss that boss, so I don't think it actually mattered. But it could have mattered, and that's the important part, right? Anyway, almost done with this chapter. For some reason, they don't attack Kamui there, nor do they go after and kill the village. It's very strange. Sometimes I wonder if perhaps it's better to have Celica just go up and then Kamui to the left, and just kind of do it that way, rather than have Celica run all the way around. But I don't know, Kamui just didn't really have the stats to do the left side very comfortably. It was a lot of vulns. I wasn't very happy with that. But maybe it would have been better. Definitely something to look into in the future if anyone else wants to potentially take a look at running this game. You want to go here so that way the archer will kill himself. Very important. But also you want to be in range of the shaman on the right, so you can end the chapter on this enemy phase as opposed to going through another player phase. And that's the end of Act 2, pretty much. We can finally get on to the part of the game that's actually interesting. I lied. But first, we have to mash... Oh, well, first we have to put everything in the convoy that's relevant, because we're going to flip back to Alm's team. And now we get to mash the A button. And start, because we get to recruit Cliff and Faye. If you don't pick them up, you can get them there. In the 2002 version, there is... all of the text is not skippable. You have to mash A through all of it. Thank goodness we are not playing on that version. And that would have been the difference between the time I got and the time I would not have gotten. Anyway, basically, in all that skip text and background changes that you saw really quickly, Celica goes to the castle, just makes a small detour to check in on Alm and friends, since she hasn't seen them since they were kids. And she sees Alm, and she's like, oh, hi. And then they get into a little bit of a spat about Alm being the leader of the Deliverance. Oh, I think I kind of skipped that part. Whoops. So back in Act 1, when you meet Clive says to Alm, you're the leader of the Deliverance now. And then Alm says, what you mean? No, I'm not. And then Clive said, if you're not the leader of the Deliverance, I will disband everything and let Zofia be conquered and completely decimated. And then Alm was like, dang, that's crazy. So then he agrees, of course. Blah, blah, blah. Celica's stuff happens. And then they meet up at the castle. And then Celica's like, you can't be the leader of the Deliverance. You're gonna die. And Alm's like, no, I'm not. And that was it. That was the whole thing. That's what happened. And anyway, Celica got real mad at him. And I mean, I get it. Because he's definitely gonna die. Or at the very least, he's gonna get hurt pretty badly, I would imagine. But he decides to stick with it, and so we've got to go into... we got to go up, and we got to go bring the fight to Enemy Kingdom. I don't remember what their name is. Also, Fernand defected from our army after Clive gave the leadership to Alm. Why? Because Fernand is a classist. He's a racist, but only for low-bred commoner filth, which is what Alm is. So he defects and joins the enemy. Anyway, this is a somewhat interesting chapter, except not really. This is actually a defeat boss map, so a lot of this combat we didn't actually have to do. But we did it anyway, because we need to make sure that Tobin gets his stat benchmarks on time. I lied. He doesn't actually have that important of stat benchmarks, but we do need his level up, so that way he has additional points of skill for additional points of hit, which is very important, like I mentioned, because we're really down bad for hit rate in this game, especially when you're trying to hit enemies on terrain, and especially for Tobin, because he has to hit all the people who are on terrain, because magic bypasses terrain effects. So he really does need the extra stats. This chapter you could actually save a little bit of time on by just keeping everyone deployed. I think having everyone deployed actually really does not matter for this chapter. So this is our first map that I believe performs the legendary triple warp, where we warp 3 times in a single map. So that was 1 warp for Alm. So we can warp him up here. This is our first chapter that we are experiencing fog. Well, this is actually our second chapter where we are experiencing fog. This is the first time. No, the fog was relevant there too. So you cannot warp to a place where you cannot see, just like you cannot attack to a place where you cannot see. Because of this, we warp Alm up, and then we're going to have to warp him up again to get him where he needs to be going. And that's just what happens when you don't have vision. It does make things very complicated. We're also going to warp Gray up because we need Gray to kill one of these guys. I guess we could have done it with Tobin, but we didn't. Because Gray does also have relevant stat benchmarks that he needs to hit. I don't remember what they are, but I do remember that he does need to get them. Because he does need to fight some enemies in Act 4. And Act 4 is pretty tough. It's got a lot of stuff in it, so... There we go. So we get another warp here. We're going to warp up Gray. There's a green unit on the right there. His name's Luther. You can recruit Luther, and he's a pretty competent mage, actually. But not more than Tobin is. So, I don't recruit him. And that has some ramifications later. But couldn't be bothered to care about those when I was routing. Anyway, this is a very fun Seas map, so... although I probably would recruit him if this was a route map. It's not, though. Anyway, we land these 73% hits here. Very big for a level up on Gray. We do want him to promo. We do need Tobin to promo. That's not optional as well. Because we do need Tobin's white magic as well as his black magic. Which is very interesting. And it's also the reason that we use Tobin over everyone else. As we get to one of the hardest chapters to actually route in the game, which sounds silly because it seems like a very basic chapter. It's defeat bosses. There's 3 of them, and they're all right next to each other. So you would think you would just warp somebody in and take them out, which is exactly what we do. But the actual intricacies of this is actually quite complicated because, again, the hit rates are not great. 80 is fine, but also, as you can see, we don't have the juice to clear. Like what? Are you serious? And the answer is yes. We don't have the offensive attack power, despite having 100% growth, to actually take these guys out. It's really sad. And I was working on many different avenues to try and get this to work. And in the end, I just settled on this clear, which I do actually like because it has no reposition and preps. You just take what the game gives you and you work with that. And then, of course, we have Excalibur, which has much better hit rates. If you fire into that slot, you double miss. And that was the huge complicating factor of this chapter, was that you almost always double missed him on the player phase. And in the old version of the route where you were actually repositioning early, you actually missed him 5 of 6 hits. It was unbelievable. Legendarily bad. And I seriously considered, and maybe what we should be doing on that chapter is not resetting for better random numbers in the table. Like, genuinely. And we get this chapter. This chapter is actually super cool. There is a lot going on here. So, this has a lot to manage. First off, like I mentioned, we're managing our hit rate RNs to make sure that we hit the enemies we need to hit and kill them so we can actually advance. This, is, of course, also requires a giant warp. You warp from the middle area here to all the way to the end of the chapter. Using Silk's warp. You do have to go up into the room in order to have enough warp range. It's pretty close, but you do have to kill all these guys. In addition, we also need to do something that we haven't had to do yet, which is Cantor spawn management. What is that? Great question. enemy cantors are basically enemy summoners. They can summon enemies, typically monsters, and they kill you with them. We need to make sure that they don't spawn, or at least if they do spawn, we need to make sure that those enemies don't actually attack anyone. Because the spawning itself is slow, and the enemy combats are slow as well. So ideally they need to not spawn, but if we can't figure out a way to make that happen, could we at least make it so those spawns don't attack anyone? I do not know what percentage they spawn at, so I don't know what those numbers are that I need to be hitting. All I need to know is that there are numbers that I need to end the RNs on in order to make sure that the Cantor doesn't spawn in enemies. And we do this multiple times, there's a lot of Cantors in the run. We do go up here. I try to crit him with Excalibur, and unfortunately I don't. But hey, at least we don't miss. And he's going to kill himself on enemy phase, so this is fine too. But yeah, the Cantor summoning is controlled by the main RNs, just like everything else. So, or almost everything else. And as you can see, we are not lucky enough to get him not to spawn at all. But hey, at least it's the turn that we're ending the map, so at least our green unit there isn't going to see combat. That's a Matilda, a story update. That green unit is Matilda. That's Clive's wife. Clive has requested to take a detour in order to save her life, despite the fact that it has no strategic value. Especially because Clive is a useless sack of garbage that isn't good at all. Matilda is at least an acceptable combat unit, for what that's worth. Anyway, but it actually turned out to be important because we get the Royal Sword, Alm's Omega weapon, which is very important. As you saw there, we did not do a save and reset. We're just going straight into the next chapter. You cannot clear this chapter in a single turn if you reset the game. I kid you not. There's no RNG string that you can use. There's no way to make it happen. But if you don't reset, you can just do this. Pretty cool, right? Shout out to Acantha for giving us the thief vision so we could actually see. We take another detour here. Moving on the overworld map is really slow, and the other chapters that you could go to a Mila statue on aren't very fast either. So I actually determined that it was faster to play this chapter than do anything else, because like I mentioned, it is not optional. Tobin does need to promote. It saves substantial amounts of time, and I know because I considered not promoting Tobin. But it's just not feasible. You do have to do it. And then I also did test going back to the Thief Shrine. But unfortunately that's a survive map, so that's going to take a while. So I don't like that. You could go back to the Deliverance Hideout. That's had a little bit more promise. But I decided that this was actually less bad. But neither were particularly good. And it's very possible that I came to the wrong conclusion. Definitely something to consider as well if anyone else wants to run this game in the future and wants to get a better time. What is not something to consider, however, is Tobin's promotion. I promise he does need to be in Sage. It is not optional. There is no alternatives. It must be this way. There is potentially merit in having Gray not promote, though. You also might have noticed that I actually got the C support between Alm and Tobin. This does come up. So it is important. This is an escape chapter, so at least we don't have to go through and kill everyone, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, almost hit the escape point next turn and we can get out of here. As we head over to chapter 21, but this time for real. What is this chapter? I'm trying to remember. It's a siege chapter. That means nothing. Oh! It's this chapter. This chapter also probably has room for improvement. I was pretty unhappy with this clear. I always felt like it left something more on the table. Anyway, I choose to take out the boss here. It gives us the coral ring, which I actually do use, I believe. This is the coral one, yes? Yes. So it gives us the coral ring. I actually do end up using this. It does actually end up important. I use it a couple of times, but it has one very, like, important non-replicable use case. And then I guess there's like also merit that maybe we shouldn't be like deploying gray here, like at all either. Because these combats, they're like slow. They're probably not needed. I could probably get him his stats that he needs in other ways. Yeah, but this is a classic double warp. You're gonna warp. You warp up Tobin first, then you warp up Alm when some of the enemies are cleared, and then you go through the chapter. It's not that complicated. Very simple. Don't think, just play. A classic, right? I will use the Royal Sword for the first time. This is Alm's Omega Blade. It's really strong, but it's Alm exclusive. Nice miss from Gray. I'm kind of out of things to say. I don't really have anything else to say about this chapter. It's just not... There's not much to say. I'm not familiar enough with the other Valencia games to really make a lot of comparisons. I've never played Gaiden, the original, and I played Echoes a couple of times. thought it wasn't very fun. I do prefer this version. I do think it's the best of the three. But not by much. As it turns out, I just think there's only so much you can do with the base Valencia map design. And while this game does at least have variety in its levels, more so, it's still, you know, only okay. Which, I know that doesn't sound great, but coming from me, that is, like, pretty good praise. Finally, a chapter that we have something to actually say about. This is the Sluice. So you have to go over here, and you've got to prevent them from, like, destroying the entire everything by unflooding this dam that we're on. This chapter is actually really cool. There is a deceptively large amount going on here that you have to actually manage. So first off, who do you work first? The answer is Tobin, is what I came to. And there's a lot going on here. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of enemies. We need to clear out most of them. This is a siege chapter, so you have to kill the boss. One of the big questions, you had a lot of big questions on this map, which was first, where do you warp to? I termed the answer was here. The second one was, how do I kill the boss? Do I kill him above the wall, just while he's still on the throne? Or do I actually walk all the way around and do it? I have to walk all the way around with Alm anyway, but I could theoretically not walk around all the way with both. That might be possible. So I had to investigate that. I actually had some issues with the RNG on this chapter as well before I found that you could just do this, and that it'll work if you move properly. And then you also have to keep Silk safe as well. That's what Gray is for, as you might expect. I know that I should have, like, more to say, but I kind of don't. There's Delphia. So Delphia is a recruitable unit. She's the second boss of this chapter. But she's a recruitable unit if you brought Luther and talked to her. And she's actually really good. I did want to use her. Because she theoretically actually has quite a few legitimate applications. One of the many units that has quite a few legitimate applications that I just couldn't make work. And anyway, it was the RNG seed that actually determined for me whether or not I could kill the boss through the wall. And I determined that I couldn't because I had to stand there with Alm in order to kill Delphia. Because I can't recruit her because I don't have Luther. So, that was that. Some other units I considered using were both Cliff as a mage, as well as Faye. Not Faye. Is that her name? I think her name is Faye, isn't it? As a mage as well. Faye actually had a lot going for her. As a magic unit, you can use magic stats to do magic things, but in addition she had sword access because she's a female mage and goes into priestess, and it's like Selleck's class line, and so it's actually really good. You could have, there's a lot you can do with that. There's some pretty cool weapons in this game that you can make really useful effectiveness of. like the Lady Blade that you can't do otherwise, and it's definitely a consideration for the future, because there's definitely legitimate merits to using potentially using Faye over Gray as like the secondary combat unit. I chose not to do that because I thought it would be worse. But there are some points where I was like, man, I really should have used Faye, huh? So anyway, we stopped the bad guys from flooding the entire continent. And now we get to move on to the C team, Team Celica. So unlike the previous part of Celica's in Act 2, where everything was like super boring and nothing was like happening except for Celica moving forward, this time around there's actually some interesting things going on. As you can see, we've just received 2 new units. Woo! We have Katria, who's actually really good, and we have Paula, who is fine. I had a choice. Which one of these do I want to use? I chose to use Katria because she worked better for what I wanted. Definitely could have used Paula, though. It was definitely a consideration, and maybe in the future that might turn out to be better. But I used Katria because, I don't know, I like her more, I guess. So anyway, Celica's just going to rush the boss. In the meantime, we need to train Katria, because Katria needs to reach as much skill as possible, because we need to land an extremely important crit in Act 4. Actually, 2 of them. And so, she needs to be trained to the max that I can do that doesn't eat a whole bunch of time, and this was one of the least bad options available. That enemy axe unit does have a sword reaver, by the way, which is why we actually got hit there. But don't worry, because the rest of these enemies don't. Anyway, we have the axe reaver. If you're wondering when we got that in Alm's route in the previous chapters. It's the reason we did Alm section first, so we could get this now and do this. This axe reaver is probably one of the most important weapons in the entire run. So most of the weapons haven't really been that impactful. We got some decent use out of the iron sword, and I promise the steel lance will be used before the game is over. But like up until this point, we haven't really had. Oh, and of course, the Levin sword has been excellent. But perhaps the most pivotal is actually this axe reaver. So not only is it effective against axes, which is relatively useful against pirates, who we just had to fight, because we're still not done fighting pirates, folks. Still not done with that. But also because it has 5 crit, which I know that doesn't sound like much, but I promise you, it is in fact everything. Speaking of potential route updates for if anyone smarter than me wants to try their hand at it, something to look at is this chapter in particular. I deployed Kamui because I determined it was necessary to promote him at the time of doing this run. As I look at it more now, I don't know if that is true. I tried it without back then, and I determined it was an issue with Katria's survival. But if it turns out that Paula is the unit that we need to be using, or that Katria is the unit that we need to be using, and we could sacrifice Paula here instead, then maybe that's a lot better than doing the other thing. Because there is something that I do use Paula for later, but I could theoretically do it with Est, who you get, because she flies and can use javelins as well, so potentially that would have been an available option. So I don't know, definitely a consideration for future routing of this game, should anyone decide that they actually want to take a look at it, because I'm not playing this game again, but one of you guys can. There's a village there. It comes with 2 recruitable units, Atlas and the other guy. Atlas is a villager, just like he is in Shadows of Valencia. The other guy is a woodcutter, I believe, and that's an axe unit. One of our very few axe units. Generally not very good, so awesome. Anyway, 28 attack is the Celica benchmark of choice. We also obtain Ragnarok, one of the strongest spells in the game. Anyway, we do use Katria to fight this terror. She misses, of course, but she does get some very critical EXP, because pretty much every point of EXP matters so much on her. It's unbelievable how just super tight the benchmarks are for her to do anything. Like, it's actually crazy. We go visit the armory to buy a javelin, and then we proceed to not buy anything else and never step foot in an armory again. How cool is that? And I believe we get our first instance of secret movement tech in this game. So in this game, just in the Sacred Echoes, not in the other versions of Valencia, can you use the skill Swap. So Swap is available on most mage units if you get them to high enough levels. So in our case, that's Celica and Tobin and no one else. Swap swaps your position with the unit next to you, which effectively gives them 1 additional point of movement. So that's cool. It does come up occasionally. Anyway, this is a classic. Celica beats up all the enemies, but in order to save a little bit of time, we use our Katria to fly her across the sand. We also get Jesse. That's the green unit. We don't recruit him, but we could. Jesse is a thief in this game, as opposed to the other games where he's a mercenary. It's a pretty big downgrade for him, but this team doesn't actually have a thief on it. But again, you don't need one. You have Celica, who uses the magical powers of to open chests. So, do you really need a thief? And maybe you do. Anyway, we go and we fight this archer with a javelin, despite taking effective damage, because it's the one that actually hits, it kills. Thanks, random numbers. Anyway, we get through this chapter, and we choose to fight Dean. I remember the routing process very early. Meister Schwart, good friend of the channel. He asked me, "Why are you training Kamui? Can't you just use Dean?" And I said, "No, we have to kill Dean." And then he's like, "Why?" And then I said, "Because Sonia's chapter is much slower, and I need another person who can use Excalibur, and Sonia does that." So we can't actually use Dean. So if any of you were wondering why we were training Kamui and not just using Dean, that's why. We landed this javelin hit here because, guess what? We need to change the random numbers. So we gave Celica the gold dagger, because we need to actually land these 61s. Also, that was the enemy I was talking about. As it turns out, because of the RN change, we just crit him anyway. So who cares? We cleared anyway. So just super funny there. The additional point of strength also lets us one round the boss of this chapter, in theory. And speaking of really funny stuff, We have to attack with Katria first, because if you attack with Kamui first, Katria double misses, meaning you fail to kill the guy. So good. Anyway, this is a classic defeat boss and then seize the throne chapter. This chapter does have a lot going on, since there's a decent amount of training for Katria. We also get the Ill Wound. The Ill Wound is a personal favorite sword of mine. It is described in the game as a hefty broadsword. Very accurate. It's really has really bad accuracy. Just horrendous accuracy. But if you hit, the enemy will die. If you are not playing on 100% growths and don't use the placebo orange, if you want to one round, or if you want your best odds to actually kill this boss in 4 hits is actually the Ill Wound. So very convenient that you get it here. Now, because we used the placebo orange and got the extra point of strength, our best odds are actually going to be with the gold dagger, so we won't be using the Ill Wound, sadly. But it's very cool. In addition, there was some previous routing where I was actually using the Ill Wound with Gray, courtesy of the easy mode weapon transfers. If you're wondering, enemy stats aren't like that different between the easy and hard mode. The real issue is the RNG, as well as not being able to transfer items between both teams, are really the real kickers of why we actually play this on easy mode. It doesn't really have that much to do with enemy stats. I guess I can talk about the ring that Katria has. Katria's had the Angel Ring this entire time. Unlike in Gaiden, where it increases your growth rates massively, in this game it just gives you plus 20 luck, which is still pretty good. And as you can see, there's actually a Cantor here. We have been manipulating him to make sure that he doesn't spawn in any enemies, which is why we attacked the Brigand on the previous turn, but not this one. So as you can see, we actually have exact lethal here with this, but unfortunately we missed one of the attacks because the hit rates are just so bad. And no, if you attack the thief first, you still miss against Grief. So there's not really a whole lot we could do about that. But hey, we land 3 of 4 to clear it out. As where if you otherwise you could use the Ill Wound where you only have to hit 2 of 4, but the hit rate is in the mid 40s, so it's pretty bad. We get Est here. Est is our last flyer. We also get Sonya, who's a mage that can use Excalibur, which that in and of itself is actually quite notable. We have one more Siege chapter here. This chapter is actually very simple. You just fly across with Katria. Now, unfortunately, a lot of enemies actually have mountain walk in this game. So standing here like this doesn't actually stop that many enemies from moving. But hey, it stops more than 0, which I guess is notable. This is our first of many big-time Catria throne clears. So we're going to use Catria to kill the enemy that's on the throne and then seize with Celica. We do this a lot. Most of them require pretty low percentage crits. I don't think this one does, luckily. Yeah, exact lethal there on the steel lance. So we just go and seize him. Get the mage ring. That was the ring I was talking about that we give to Tobin later. We actually do use it on this team as well because we have a competent magic user in Celica. As we go to the final chapter of this act, bypassing the extra map. We don't need to promo anyone anymore. So we head straight into this chapter. Another one of the really cool chapters in this game that I really like. As you can see, Jenny is here. Jenny is here, as well as Sonia and Paula as well. A lot of deployments. What's going on? Well, there's a lot of enemies on this map. They like to attack you, and they're very inconveniently located for us. So what we do is we use the masterful plan of what if we just made them target different units so no one died? And that's exactly what I do, and that's why Jenny is here. So the witch is going to teleport down, and while we'll be in range to deal substantial damage, causing deaths on the next turn for either Kamui or Sonia, instead, we have them attack Jenny, who if she dies, it's not that big of a deal. And originally I was planning for her to die, but she actually lives, which I was very surprised by. I guess that's courtesy of easy mode. But yeah, she actually makes it through. Anyway, so we use rescue here, and we're going to stand there. Basically the plan, very interesting location. Why are you standing right there and not moving all the way up? Well, you'll see next turn why that's the case. We're also going to position Paula properly here. It is somewhat dubious because since we are rescuing her at this point, we face some pretty substantial damage. We were dead there if all of those hit, but they didn't. Because the bad RNG does help us survive, because they also miss with terrible number rolls. Noma is here. New unit alert, folks, and this one actually matters. Noma has access to the ultimate weapon, Warp. Here to warp us a pretty small distance. His warp is not nearly as strong as Silk's, unfortunately, but hey, it's better than nothing, so we'll take it. Anyway, Catria doesn't have the juice to kill this boss, so instead we're going to have him kill himself on Celica, while Catria chips some more enemies. Easy. Anyway, these green units who, unfortunately, we can't get, waste our time. Maybe I should have deployed an additional unit to potentially rescue one of them. Maybe should have done that, but it's okay. We pick up this kill against this shaman for a level up before we exit. Seems a little weird, but like I said, we need every point of skill we can get our hands on to make sure that this attack that we do need to crits, because it's in, I believe, the very next chapter. Maybe the chapter after, I forget. I think it's the chapter after next. But these all these late game Celica chapters, they all kind of blend together because it's all swamp, and it's all crits and swamp for so much of it. Anyway, now that we have made it to the Milla statue, and it's determined that Celica was actually royalty the whole time. That's right, Celica was part of the Zofia royal family. Her identity was hidden from her and everyone. Well, I don't think it was hidden from her, but it was hidden from a bunch of other people. It's also the reason why Celica was really upset with Alm about being leader of the Deliverance, but she couldn't actually say that. So, you know, that's fun. Anyway, we do a little bit of switching here as we go straight back into Celica's army. And we pick up the Axe Reaver. Can't imagine what that's for. Oh yes, it's this chapter. So this chapter took 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Not quite, 18 days, but almost 3 weeks in order to figure out this strategy that actually worked. There was a lot of, do we reset, do we not reset, what are our RNG manipulation options, and in the end I decided that deploying a bunch of units would be the answer, because this is a fly across with Catria, and whatever, there's not really a whole lot we can do about that. If you want to like potentially seize here on turn 3, which we do. Anyway, we get the Kamui is going to fight this Dread Fighter, and this Dread Fighter is going to be our key to RN rerolls. Because between the level up of the previous chapter, which gave us an additional point of skill, which gives us slightly better odds here on this crit with the Axe Reaver. In addition, we can fight this Dread Fighter with 2 ranged weapons multiple times. We could have brought Est over. We could have brought some additional other units over, potentially for the RNs. But it took me a really long time to even figure out that like this was a feasible option, which is really what took forever. But I was trying all sorts of ways to avoid doing that, because that's slow and it's obnoxious, and I would prefer not to move any of these guys if I can. But in the end, I had to. But hey, it was worth it for the crit and the 3-turn on this chapter, I would say, because that's still very fast. As we go into chapter 24C, this is another. Is this another swamp crit? I think this is another swamp crit. No, this is not a swamp crit. This is the chapter that we have to use Kamui instead of Saber for. So this is also the reason we need Sonya, is because of this chapter. So as you can see, there's these things, you might have seen them before, they're called Draco Zombies. If you have somebody who can use Seraphim, you can kill them pretty easily. We're pretty light on Seraphim users, as you can tell. So what we actually do is we have Kamui fight this guy for 4 damage each hit. And for some reason, if you use Saber, this Necro Dragon just doesn't attack you, and we need him to also attack us in order to kill on time. I think it's something related to the luck stat, but I'm not entirely sure. So it's very strange, but hey, it is what it is. Anyway, so we do have to hit these attacks here in order to make this actually work. And Celica's going to go and defeat the Cantor on the throne there. This boss, however, is going to be a tag team effort from the rest of the squad. As you can see, Catria hits for big 1 damage. So the big issue with this guy is that he's got a prayer ring, and so you can't clear him very easily, because he's always going to live on 1. Luckily, in standard Fire Emblem 2 fashion, minimum damage output is 1. So you can always deal damage, and thanks to the prayer ring there, we can make that happen. We're going to attack this Necro Dragon here for the kill, and then Celica is going to kill the Cantor, and we're going to get out of here without him ever spawning any guys. So huge victory. We use the Zofia. Celica gets her own Omega Blade, which we'll use not that often, because as it turns out, magic is pretty much better almost every time. Okay, here's our swamp warp into Catria crit. We again, just all the things here. As you can see, we have a bunch of deployed units because this is another RNG manipulated crit rig. That was way too hard to find, but I did it anyway. We use Leon of all characters. And then I was prepared with both Kamui and Paula to potentially have to RNG some more in order to get this. We pick up an elixir. I don't remember if I actually ever used that. But as you can see, we get some hits here. We get a level up here. This is mandatory. This is not optional. If you do not have these stats, at least these stats, you cannot pick up this kill. I kid you not. You get a nice double miss here. If you hit one of those, then maybe. But unfortunately, we get a double miss there, which means we do have to double crit this boss. Luckily, we get that 5 extra crit from the Axe Reaver coming in hot. The boss summons Necro Dragons. There's nothing we can do about that. That always happens. Because that's a scripted event. But we get the double hit here with Leon. His big contribution to the run. It's not a double crit. It's a single crit. But thanks to the boss just draining so much of his own HP with those attacks, we can actually get the single crit with the kill and take him out. And before we head over to another extra map, the Lost Treescape. This one is mandatory, is also not that bad. This is a classic undeploy everyone and fly around to the end with Catria. But very importantly, this is our very convenient opportunity to promote Catria. So I go ahead and take that. Now a Falco Knight. Falco Knights have some unique properties in this game. And by some unique properties, I mean, she now has effective damage on all monsters for the rest of the game. So that's pretty cool, I guess. There is not a lot of good monsters to really do this with. But, hey, it does come up, so don't get it twisted. But effective damage isn't super relevant in this game, especially since the basic weapons all have 0 might, so it's really only useful for stuff like the Axe Reaver, which, I mean, I guess that's pretty useful. But the Axe Reaver, I think, has kind of done its due diligence at this point. I don't think I use it again for the rest of the game. I might. There might be a spot I'm forgetting. Anyway, we do this to get the Hero's Proof. So now we can promote Alm whenever we desire. Which is why we do this route on Celica's first. And I was very tempted to not do that, because if you do Alm stuff first, just a few chapters in, and you can pick up a Killer Lance, which would have made a lot of these Axe Reaver crits a lot more consistent. Anyway, the Coral Ring, I remember how I said it was relevant? Well, this is why it's relevant. This chapter is so egregious. As you can see, immediately spawning enemies off the Cantor. This guy, who, because I prioritized this guy's RNG, he will always half your HP with his, like, Quake attack. So, we have to be pretty cautious there. And then the coral ring, which gives us plus 4 res. It also heals us a little bit. So very important stuff. And of course, this guy will always attack with his Quake attack primarily. So we can't... And the Quake attack is free. So we can't chip him using his own magic. So that's always fun too. And unfortunately, Katria cannot kill this boss. There's like no way. There's no way to get RNG rerolls here in any way that's meaningful. You could potentially, and maybe in the future this is what you do, is at this point you will switch back to Alm's team, play a couple chapters to get the Killer Lance, switch back to this team, and then Killer Lance crit this boss is potentially something to look into in the future. I'm not going to lie to you. I did not even consider doing that until this very moment in time in the commentary. So, I don't know. This is why, if you're routing a speedrun from scratch, you should probably do so with friends. Because there is ideas that you will not think of that are probably better than what you did think of, simply by having another person in the room thinking of ideas with you. And also, if something sounds stupid, it's probably not as bad as it sounds. I've also learned that as well. So, if you're ever routing a game from scratch, don't do so alone. Especially if it's a game with 40 plus chapters like this one. Because it's a grueling process. But hey, at least I didn't do the entire thing in 2 weeks. Shout out to my Fire Emblem 3 Houses 2005 speedrun. Well, what a massive ridiculousness that was. I've actually been working on this one for months because this is like a real big game. People have actually like played this one before. Unlike the 3 Houses, most people don't even know that exists. People know about this game and they've like played it. So I felt like it was more important to actually put in my due diligence and actually do what I think is a real good job. I don't know if I succeeded, but I sure did try. I can tell you that. We do some undeployments here. These undeployments might not be necessary, considering how I ended up doing this chapter anyway. That's another thing that you can probably speed up. Undeploy less units than what I did here. Because a lot of these undeployments are really unnecessary in hindsight. So this is a fun map, I guess. So you have to kill a boss. You can either kill Jeddah, who only takes damage like every 4 attacks, or you can kill this mogul. Anyway, I hit the 44% hit raw first try. That was very funny. With all the bad hit rates in this game, I was like, there's no way that this works. So I was trying all sorts of random nonsense, and then I was just like, I mean, I guess I should try and see if we land the 44 on first hit, right? And we sure did. And this brings us to Celica chapter 28, which, I kid you not, is the coolest chapter in the game. This chapter is sick. They cooked with this one, I won't lie to you. So this is a seize all the throne chapters. They call it escape, but that's not what it is. It is a seize. It is a seize multiple thrones chapter. But obviously, there's only one seize command, so they do the seizing with the escape command, essentially. So that's what you do. You have to escape all of these thrones. And it's pretty tough. All the people on the thrones, they don't move. The other guys do, though, so it's actually quite dangerous, potentially. But we do have a lot of interesting tools, including the Mage Ring, which we've given to Celica for this chapter, as well as Warp, which we have with Noma, which we're going to do this turn as well. Katria making great use of her new effective damage. And then Conrad's here getting into position because he's going to be fighting somebody too. He actually has decent stats. Who's Conrad? Who cares? He's just some guy that they threw into this game here at the end just to make sure that you don't get soft locked. We get some nice unskippable text. Everyone has these, and there's a case to be made that you should actually do this with Atlas and not Jenny. I did Jenny because she's at the top of the deployment list, so I don't have to undeploy anyone to use her. But there's a case to be made that you should do this with Atlas because Atlas has slightly less text. So it's one less A push, so that's faster. I don't actually know what you should be doing or what you shouldn't be doing. Definitely worth a consideration. Maybe I need to like count out every single text block that you would get for how many times you need to mash A, and then optimize around the least amount of those. It's potentially a consideration. Anyway, Conrad sucks, so we actually have to use a team effort with him and Sonya to actually take out this enemy here. And Katri is going to fight these guys on the left here. There's some Cyclopses up there. We really don't have a great answer to them, so I fight them with Celica as well. As where Katria is going to take out this guy, and Kamui will seize in the upcoming turns. And we get the Lady Blade. Talk about a weapon that I wish I could use. It is, for all intents and purposes, it's basically an easy mode exclusive. Because you get it so late into the game, if you're not playing on easy mode, that basically no one gets a chance to use it. Which is, except in like Final, which is super lame. So instead, if you play on easy mode, of course, you can transfer convoys. So we actually could theoretically make use of the Lady Blade if we used Faye, and it's something that I really wanted to do. Because the Lady Blade, I think if it's being held by a woman, it does triple damage. Or it has triple might. 6 base might. So, it's pretty good. Oh, also in this chapter, make sure that you don't have anyone stuck in the doors when you escape. Because then they're stuck there and they can't leave. Also, Celica and Conrad can't seize these thrones. So that's cringe. Anyway, Katria just barely has the juice to actually take these guys out with the Steel Lance. So we do that, and we get a nice warp here to warp over. Taking advantage of Celica's Mage Ring is what we're going to do to kill this terror from 3 spaces away. That way we can just escape on the next turn with both Noma and Katria and get out of this chapter. Gradavis is also in this chapter, and again, another thing that you really can only take advantage of if you're playing on easy mode. Gradivis does not do triple damage if it's held by a woman, however. It's just a good weapon. Anyway, with that done, you end turn again, and these enemies spawn in. These enemies have the end condition flag, so you have to kill them, and then the map is over. But first, make sure that you dump off the mage ring and all your other weapons that you care about, so that way the other team can use them. And with Celica's act done, you would think that we're pretty close to the end of the game now, right? Well, I hate to disappoint you, because we have our longest individual section left to play. Alm Act 4. We start by promoting Alm with the hero's proof we got from Celica's route, which is why we did hers first. So unlike that route where it's a bunch of Celica, or a bunch of Catria crits into Celica seizes, we have a very large variety of objectives here that we need to get. Between seize maps and routes and defeat bosses, there's all sorts of nonsense going on. And it's bad for us. And I think it doesn't help that I think I played this particular section of the game kind of poorly at certain points. I definitely did a decent job at times and less good at others. Part of it was I was a little thrown off because Gray actually has slightly less EXP than he did in my original planning, and so he can't use the Ill Wound right now, which I had originally planned on using. Anyway, this is a big old route map, so you know what that means, folks. Time to watch Tobin fight all the enemies. Woo! We gave him the mage ring, so he has 3 range. So if anyone tries to attack him at 3 range, they can deal with that. We've got Gray over here on the left side. He's going to be fighting these 3 generals. These 3 generals in particular are the reason that you might want to consider Faye for this role instead of Gray. And is definitely a real consideration. Because you do not one-round these 3 generals. And you actually one-round none of the enemies that he's going to be fighting in this chapter. 0. All 5 of these guys, he fails to one-round. The Archer and the Paladin both have healing AI. So it's super obnoxious dealing with these guys. So definitely a consideration just for that. And Faye also just, again, it's really good combat. As it turns out, magic is strong. Who would have guessed? Yeah, you see I checked the Lady Blade's damage there. Not nearly sufficient for what we want. Yeah, I'm looking like damage. It's like, okay, so I need to put her there. So hopefully she'll attack. The Archer will attack Matilda and maybe not run away to get healed. Tobin at least 1 rounds Berkut. That's pretty cool. As you can see, his stats are really there now. They're just massive. But no, the Archer does run away, unfortunately. Tobin, at least is running towards Tobin, so Tobin can intercept. And Gray does not one around these guys, he 2 rounds. So he has to deal with that. I could have played this a little better myself, I believe. So, I mean, I did myself no favors, right? Because I could have, and I guess what I should have done is, rather than attack the Archer, or rather than attack the general, which is what I do on next turn, the one that didn't take damage, I should have just killed the paladin. Yeah, I really should have just killed the paladin. Do I miss the paladin? What happened here? Did I just play like garbage? It's very possible I just played like garbage. Anyway, Tobin is gonna kill this guy, so we don't have to deal with him. He doesn't move, so you gotta take him out. Yeah, I attacked this guy, and I really should have attacked the paladin. So that's a huge L on my part. I do a warp over here, so that way I can, because I realize it's like, oh, crap, I've made a mistake. So I go over here, and I actually shoot him with the bow. Promoted Alm gets bows, which is actually pretty good. He doesn't have the 8 bajillion range that Bow Knight gets, but hey, it's better than nothing. At least he has a 2 range option now. Anyway, at least Tobin's 9 fans are eating real good today. So that's something, I guess. I did grade the Angel Ring for the superior hit rates, by the way. There's the Killer Lance that we like. Theoretically, you could do this chapter first, especially since Alm's combat isn't that important in this chapter. And you do that one first. You get the Killer Lance, and then you swap over, and then do those with the Killer Lances, and maybe you have to do less of the RG manipulation to make the crits work. But I don't know. But again, definitely a consideration as well. What's not a consideration is the reason that I said Tobin was necessary is for this. And this is really, like, not a negotiable, I don't believe. Like I said, you need vision to warp. And, oh my gosh, look at that vision. Tobin's torch is unbelievable. And in case you're wondering, no, there is not a single other user of the torch spell in this entire game. That's not a joke. That's actually real. There's no one else who gets torch. Just Tobin. And so we have to use Tobin in order to get the vision to warp Alm up here to get this 3-turn. And if you don't get the 3-turn, you're going to have to fight the real boss of this chapter. And if you kill him, then you don't get the boots. So if you want the boots, again, doubling complicated factors here about all this. So Tobin's really not a negotiable. Maybe if you aren't playing on 100%, you don't have all this warp range, then maybe. But I still think you could probably get Tobin enough magic to clear out enough warp distance to be able to reach the tiles up here at least. So, I don't know. I think Tobin is pretty much always going to be like a mandatory carry reel here for this. Again, I think it's not particularly negotiable. Anyway, we get some nice crits here with Tobin. A classic, and then we can go seize. So, you know, still crit seizes. And we get the boots, which I don't use them immediately. I do end up using these on Alm, but I didn't know what I wanted them for at the time. And eventually I did find a place to use them. Only one, so definitely in the future, potentially boots locations could potentially be relevant. I don't know what they would be relevant for, but you theoretically could. And again, you could do this chapter theoretically before you get the hero's proof, so maybe it has an application on Celica's side. I don't know. Originally, I was considering boots for here, but in the end, I actually just determined that I could just use swap on Tobin, and it's the same thing. So we get a nice big warp here as we warp over Tobin. He's gonna clear out a bunch of enemies, and then we're gonna seize the throne. It's a classic, man. It's a classic. We're almost done. We're almost done. How many chapters we got left? Well, let's see. There's 30. There's 31, I think, on Alm's side here. And then... There's three finals. All of those are really fast, though. Well, 2 of those are really fast. Anyway, I have very little to say about this chapter. Yo, Medusa's Call. So this chapter is, I remember, like, super obnoxious in Shadows of Valencia, but here it's super obnoxious. So actually, nothing has changed. You have to kill what's her name? I don't remember. You know what? Now seems like a decent time for a story update, doesn't it? So. Alm and company have decided that in order to end this once and for all, they need to take the fight to enemy country. So that's exactly what they do. And we are now invading enemy country in order to kill them all and save the continent. Meanwhile, Celica's team has determined that the world is being destroyed because evil god has killed Mila, and Celica doesn't believe that to be true, because how do you kill a god? And then the answer is with a funny sword, as we saw in the cutscene, with the sword in the dragon's head. The dragon's Mila. The sword in her head. She's dead. Get cooked. Owned. Even. And so they figure that she's dead. So now Celica's demoralized and also captured by evil god's henchman Duma. Or not Duma. Evil god's henchman Jeddah. Alm's side, we're destroying the enemy. That's the whole game plan, is destroy the enemy. Using the magical powers of warp, bows, and magic. The ultimate trifecta. Anyway, we have to take this detour in order to save this green unit. So that way Zeke won't try and kill us on the next chapter. Anyway, it's very important to beat this chapter as soon as possible so you can stop watching the green unit take poison animations. Anyway, using the mage ring, we have a superior range. It can use Excalibur in order to net the skill. And Tobin's magic cap, or HP cap, is 52. Anyway, we get Nosferatu and a holy ring off of this lady, and now we can seize. Woo! We're getting there. So next up, we have our last, like, really big route chapter of the game in 27A. This chapter is really cool. I really like it. This was a lot of fun to route. There's a lot going on. and is also the reason that you need to train Gray. So this is the last real functional purpose of Gray. As you can see, we're grabbing the Brave Sword and the Ill Wound. This is another one where maybe we really should have trained Faye. Generally, the more I'm watching, the more I'm like, man, maybe I really should have further explored Faye, because she might have actually been the right answer here. Anyway, we get a warp. We're gonna warp up Alm. Alm's gonna fight the boss. We need Tobin's high-powered magic in order to one-shot the snag, because this snag is OP. And we're gonna use the Brave Sword here to actually one-round generals. Wait, crazy? Hold on, is Gray actually good? Who needs magic? Just kill him, you know? Anyway, Tatiana actually has some offensive juice with Seraphim. And can kill this general, and then Alm's just gonna kill this guy, because who cares? Tatiana's gonna almost die, but almost dying is not dead. And anyway, Zeke's entire squad here is all red units, but they won't be red for too much longer. Because they will turn green once Tatiana talks to them. And we get a very unfortunate miss from Alm. Alm, what are you doing? You can't be missing these enemies. There's definitely also a consideration on holding off on recruiting these guys because they turn green. And so there's like definitely like an argument that's like, actually you shouldn't recruit them because then you have to watch other phase. And other phase is cringe. And it's definitely something to think about. I decided not to do that because I thought that was more trouble than it was worth. Anyway, Tobin's going to protect whatever her name is. And we're going to get some movements over here. And pick up a nice kill here with the Ill Wound. Nice crit. The Ill Wound does have some crit on it as well. Anyway, this soldier's going to kill himself because we did kill him last time. That's just one of those unfortunate stuff about RNG. There's really only so much we can do. Anyway, Tobin with the clean pickups. I tried to do that side with Gray, and it just doesn't work, unfortunately. Probably would work with Faye, though. Hey, we get some unfortunate reinforcements. There's no reasonable way to clear this map before they spawn with the units that we have. So that's not really an option for us. So we recruit now. This is the earliest possible time we could recruit. We maybe should have waited one more turn. Who knows? And anyway, Zeke is here, so I'm going to use him to actually fight this guy. Of course, we get doubled because we're real gamers. And I used the Holy Bow, actually, to fight this guy. I miss, but that's fine. And Gray continuing to ill wound all these enemies. Getting all the level ups from these promoted enemies. It's pretty sick. And anyway, we're also in position for our final warp for Gray of the run here. Because we're going to warp him up and he's going to fight those reinforcements. And I guess also this guy. Kind of forgot about him. So we just got Zeke. Zeke is a gold knight, so he's the promoted version. He's the tier 3 cavalier type. He's not very good. He's super slow. As you saw, he got doubled earlier. He has decent stats, I guess, otherwise. And he does alright, but I wouldn't call him good. And I don't think we use him at all after this chapter. But hey, at least he did something, which is more than I can say about Clive. Chapter 28, I don't have too much to say about this map in particular. Since it's a pretty simple, it's a warp and shot, and then you have a on the other side picking up some kills with the holy bow. It's not really a ton going on here. What I would like to comment on is something that annoys me about this game that we've not yet commented on, and that is the overworld map. When you're approaching new chapters, it's so unbelievably slow, like legendarily slow. Like it's incredible. Like it's like, oh man, I have to watch for multiple seconds while Alm slowly moves to the next location. Like, bro, get over yourself. This is war. Can you move a little faster, please? I guess not. Anyway. I had to complain about that before we were out of here. Anyway, this is a very simple chapter. Tobin's gonna kill everything, and then everything that Tobin doesn't kill, Alm's gonna kill. Very simple stuff. These guys don't even give that much EXP, dude. What the heck? They're Necro Dragons. Anyway, we don't actually kill the boss here, which is kind of wild. It's very simple. You cannot, if you try and do Alm's route first, you actually get stuck at this chapter. You cannot proceed past it. So, there's not really much we can do there. Yeah, so you get this, and then it's like, oh, we have to fill up this ditch. But if you've done Celica's route, it is skippable cutscene. You can't skip the first part where they say you can't get past, but you can skip the second part where it says you can get past. Very funny. But anyway, if you do Celica's stuff first, then you can clear that. And it takes you to this chapter, which is Welcome to Snow World. We've entered the ice lands of Iceland. Not actually. Here in chapter 29. Swapping out for mage rings as we head over here. This is a pretty tough one. So Silk has to do a couple of warps here, and so we actually have to do combat with her, with Nosferatu, to heal her, so that way she can do an additional warp. I believe is what I determined was necessary, if I recall correctly. Maybe I just needed to kill a guy for stats. I forget. But anyway, we start with the Tobin warp, and he's gonna kill everything with his massive stats. Just comically strong at this point. Everyone does like basically no damage with terrible hit rates, and you can just smoke everyone. At least everyone that you can attack. But these bow knights and these snipers, they have a little bit too much range, so that's unfortunate. Anyway, but we have to do a big warp over the river to get to the boss area. And I'm just kind of clearing out the way, so that way I can do that safely. And we do go over it, I think, just with Alm. But yeah, here's all that Silk training coming into play here. With the slightly better hit rates than she'd have otherwise, and then also the actual damage to one-round enemies. And this is like end game numbers here. Nice whiff. But we do get to kill that guy with and the bow before ending. And is the warp next turn? Warp might be next turn, maybe the turn after. You can kill the boss there and then open the gate, or you could walk all the way around the right side. But I kind of determined that both of those were definitely too slow, and you should just warp across the bridge. Because if you open the bridge, all the enemies are going to come to you through the bridge, and it's too many enemies. I'm not trying to fight all these guys. Yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah, we move to position, and then we warp, and then we attack after we warp. That's the plan. Because you want to warp now, because if you warp too early, the enemies are going to turn around, and then they're going to start going after you, right? And you don't want that, because then you're fighting more enemies than you have to, which you never want to be doing. It is faster to watch all these enemies move than to, like, fight two of them, honestly. Anyway, this is a good enough position because you can max warp all the way up past the dark mages, and then you can just go straight in and you can attack him with the sword in the next turn we seize. It's pretty simple stuff. This is kind of a tough map. Not a great way to do it quickly with a limited unit spread, unfortunately. I'm pretty content with this clear, but it might be able to be improved upon. And now we're getting into the... Now it's time to really feel the speed, folks. Because we've got about 10 minutes of gameplay left, I kid you not. We're about to lightning round some of these chapters, because there is nothing to these. These are all defeat bosses here. So we have a defeat boss, this is defeat bosses, then we have a defeat boss, then we have a defeat bosses, then we have a defeat boss, and then we have a defeat boss. I kid you not, that's every remaining chapter is defeat boss. And as you know, defeat bosses are very fast chapters. So it's time to just hit them with the burn. And no one does that better than Fire from Tobin, let me tell you. So we're just about out of here. As you can see, that guy has moved into perfect position where even if we were to, like, miss and be blocked, Tobin could still kill thanks to the mage ring. So, that's fantastic. In the future, we perhaps should be looking to take the ring off of Silk, though, so that way she doesn't heal there. Anyway, we get the ultimate revenge here on Slade. And then we can proceed to get some even more stats, because that's what Tobin needed, folks. More stats. And here we go, Warfather. Time to kill the king of enemy nation and save the continent from war, folks. Sometimes you gotta wage war to beat war. That's true. So anyway, this is a classic. We're just going to warp up Tobin, and Tobin's going to kill everyone. Until the boss decides to move and die. So anyway, I guess story update. Last time we left off, we decided to bring the fight, and so the fight we brought. But as it turns out, the real villain the whole time was actually the villain on Celica's route. It was actually Evil God, who was actually been manipulating Evil Country the whole time. And Rudolph, King of Evil Nation, knew about this and did nothing. And it is now revealed that he is Alm's father. That's right, Rudolph is Alm's father. Because you can't have a male character Fire Emblem protagonist with a parent who is alive. You can't do it. They have to be dead by the end of the game. So anyway, as we move into our final three chapters, only 3 of them left. How many is that? It's 1, it's 2, it's 3. There's only 3 left, folks. And we get some slightly unskippable text, but we could skip the second part, so that's cool. And we get another defeat bosses chapter. We have to now fight Berkut and his wife, who he sacrificed to Evil God for power. And as you can see, we're taking the ill wound. Uh-oh, that's never a good sign. And yes, this is a defeat 2 bosses, luckily using the magical powers of Warp and the Mage Ring. This is really not much of a challenge to defeat this chapter. So we're going to move up, we're going to Excalibur with the Mage Ring, take her down, not quite, because she does have a prayer ring, and then we are going to use the ill wound here, which we do actually have to use. The Royal Sword does not kill. And then Renea here always warps first, or actually she just moves in this case. Heals a little bit, but not enough to save her from the wrath of Tobin. And as you can see, he's finally starting to cap stats. We're like at the end of the game, and he's just now getting there. We get Berkut's ring, which is actually like not terrible. Before moving on to Final, not to be confused with the previous map that we just played, Final. Anyway, oh, look at that. Alm and Celica are finally reunified here at the end of the game. With more unskippable text. Anyway, we use the boots. This is where I found the boots position was. So this is an Alm solo chapter. You have to beat the entire chapter with Alm and no one else, because everyone else will just immediately die, because they're stuck here at the bottom, and it's just extra combat, so you don't really want to be doing any of those. You cannot warp past these walls, so you can't bring a warper to like warp up here or anything like that. You just kind of have to hit the go button with Alm and kill everyone. So that's exactly what we do, and we can do that slightly faster by using the boots movement to make it to the upcoming areas slightly faster. So you can make it to the boss slightly faster, basically. Was the best purpose of the boots that I found. Again, there's probably a better one. I just don't know what it is, but it probably exists. I don't have anything to say. We're just killing everything with the holy bow. Like, it's just, this is the whole chapter. Anyway, this boss moves, apparently. Oh, is this Arrive? Oh, it's Arrive, okay. I forgot this was an Arrive map. We've capped strength, let's go. Oh, good, second angel ring, just in time for the end of the game. As you can see, there's a bunch of enemies spawning. We don't really care about any of that, because we're out of here. And we get the falchion, the ultimate weapon. Anyway, we crit Jeddah, and he lives on 4 HP. And anyway, here's the spirit of Mila in unskippable text. And here we are, final, together at the end, where we have to kill Evil God. A classic. And as you can see, we're undeploying a bunch of units, but not everyone, because it's Noma. He's back. You know what's stronger than one warper? 2 warpers. Anyway, we're positioning everyone to the right, and there is merit to potentially doing this chapter without Tobin, but he's my carry for this run, and it felt wrong to not include him in the final version of this clear. So, you know, potentially more time saved there, but I had to stick to my guns on this one. And Tobin has been the ultimate gun. And if I could hit the right button, I can warp Silk over, so that way Silk next turn can warp Tobin all the way up as well. And then Silk is going to get her move. And and Jeddah, with his magical gimmicks, can block damage 3 times in a row. But not 4. So get owned, nerd. I don't have much to say about this chapter. It really is just like it's just a triple warp, where you're warping all of the relevant units to the top of the map. And then you go fight Evil God, you know. It's a classic final Fire Emblem chapter, especially because Evil God takes the form of a dragon, because you've got to have a dragon as your final boss. All the better if it's also Evil God, right? So very important. Anyway. And I was considering what to do with Noma. I move him forward. I think he dies. I don't remember, actually. But yeah, Silk's gonna warp all the way to the top of the map. Then everyone's gonna be at the top of the map, and they're just gonna kill, what's his name? Note that maybe in the future I should find a way to get 1 less level up to Silk, so that way she doesn't gain this spell here, because that would be faster. We get a nice dodge here from Tobin. Duma here, the Evil God, with his magical beam. And anyway, these guys, they have a bunch of range, but it doesn't matter because they have 3 hit, because Tobin has capped stats. So if there's anything that I hope you've learned from this run, it's that 100% growths is broken. And no, that's it. That was the big takeaway, I think, from this one. And anyway, we go in there. We get him with 64 times 2 with Alm. And you better believe that that is a 1 round. thanks to the magical powers of 100% growth. It's unbelievable. And anyway, gotta accidentally hit start one more time before the end of the run. You gotta. It's mandatory. And we gotta kill Marla. Who? That's a classic. Hestia? Who even are these people? They're just making up people now. Just you gotta have portraits for the enemies in the final chapter, right? Just make them up. Who cares? Anyway, get us out of here. Nice. That's such a clean animation also. And that's Fire Emblem, The Sacred Echoes, 2002, in 2 hours and 39 minutes. Thank you very much for watching. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the end of the video. For those of you strong enough to make it through the absolute garbage that you just had to witness, thank you very much. I appreciate it greatly. So this speedrun was very interesting. I won't lie to you. I had a time putting it together. Yeah, I sure did. As I mentioned, there are some things that definitely, if anyone wants to speedrun this game, like for real, there are some things to look into, which is mostly, should you be using Faye or should you be using Gray as the, like, combat support? Because that combat support role is necessary in some capacity, because in a couple of chapters you really do want the additional combat unit, and there's not one who just shows up capable of doing it, because Matilda leaves a lot to be desired and everyone else is complete garbage, or there's Zeke who shows up too late, and that's really the case scenario, which is really unfortunate. I think Celica's side, though, was, like, pretty good. That's kind of, like, the best you're gonna get, except for a theoretical hopscotch to get the killer lance early, and then do a bunch of the kills that I had to spend a bunch of effort rigging. You could remove the additional rig combats and just potentially crit with the killer lance. I don't know if that's even going to work because, again, the crits are kind of low chance, even with the killer, but it's better. This run was segmented, and I spliced it together. I'm sure that was noticeable at some points, but I didn't say it up front like I did in the previous April Fool's speedrun that I did. Also, obviously, this game is not a real sanctioned Nintendo game. This is a ROM hack of Sacred Stones. So if you want to play it yourself, there will be a link to the FE Universe page for it in the description of the video, should you wish to play it yourself, which I actually do recommend. It genuinely is my favorite way to play Gaiden, which is like a low bar, admittedly, because while Shadows of Valencia's presentation is really nice, its gameplay is really not, and Gaiden is a NES game, so you know it's held up really well. But yeah, that's kind of it. Thank you all for watching. And I don't know. I guess I'll see you next year. Uh, when I do another April Fool's speed run of some game that has no business being sped ran. But you know, we'll see. Oh, and if you haven't already, you should watch last year's um, April Fools, where I did Fire Emblem Three Houses (parentheses 2005). It was genuinely a killer speed run. I did a great job on it. Probably better than this one. I'm not gonna lie. I actually am lying. I think the run itself was really bad, but the commentary was peem. I think in this one it was only great. Uh, so you know that's how it is. I think that's all I had to say. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Blah blah blah. Like, subscribe, dislike, comment. Thanks.